Is my boat ready? I don't want to go into too much of the detail of safety. Really, we all kind of know what we should have by way of a safe boat. Make it offshore ready, and that will be sufficient. You'll have some questions such as whether I have a dinghy or whether I have a life raft. Sure, they're sensible questions. I think probably both is the answer on that. Insurance. It's a really important question. Is your boat insured for what you're wanting to do? And I can tell you the minute you go over to November 2 and it's not insured, and you're not below the latitude of Fraser Island, you're in trouble. So think about it and look at it. Look at the fine print. Do you have spares? I can tell you I ran out of Intellas on Martin's boat, and partly because of what we did. Safety, it's number one, naturally. I'm going to take you through some of the routes that I would suggest, not all of the routes. Well, I'm not going to sit here and go, this is where you have to go. I'm going to ask you to think about where you want to go and how you want to do it, whether you want to do it just in the daylight hours as best you can, because it won't happen that way. But the fact of the matter is the routes that I have designed have always turned to routes where you've got a fallback position. The nearest port, somewhere where it's safe. If the wind comes in, we haven't got it right, you've got a port to go to if there's a problem. Okay. My favourite spots, might even see Jan in one of these pictures actually. I've got lots of favourite spots. And look, I've always found a couple of the help items as being Rob's Passage Planner. I think the last one for going north was pretty good. You can actually download it for free if you're that way inclined, which I am. Windy TY, there's lots of other things you can use, as Ian pointed to. But I use Windy TY because it's graphically easy to understand and talk to your crew about. Yep, we've got charts on the boat, paper charts, naturally as well, especially if you're going to go into ports where you're not sure about. At least the big ones, the larger scale. But I always have a backup on avionics and on an iPad on my phone, at least. And usually what happens is your crew, depends how many crew, if you've got 5 crew, everybody will have an avionics, and they'll all want to tell you exactly, they did 5 minutes out of getting into port, right? So that's nothing wrong. And one of the other things I came across not so long ago, which some of you may not, or most of you won't have come across, is the Starlink RV internet options. Now, one of the cats, a mate of mine, has got a big cat, and I met him up in Coffs, and he had the Starlink internet going on the back, and he gets the RV version, not the marine version. He said it's cheaper. And it's like on a pole, and it just swivels to locate the satellites through the Elon Musk thing. He watched the Grand Prix, the whole race, the whole Coffs Harbour race, the Lotto, and we were desperate to get internet connection when we were 15, 20 miles out. And he watched the Grand Prix the whole time, which is probably why we beat him across the line like that. But anyway, it's worthwhile investigating for those who haven't investigated. Okay, I don't know whether you've, in the old days we used to ring up most of the stations nearby. Nearly all of them are pointing you to get into the app now, which comes to the previous thing about having internet connection. But I was there when they designed the new VHF antennas, and they really do work well now, and there's something you can't do without, so you're constantly being tracked. So the point is that we will log in Sydney, or log in Pittwater, and then we'll go all the way to Port Stephens. They will know where It's a really good system. In the old days, it wasn't that great, to be honest, because you'd rely on the people that were through their wonderful generosity, passing on the information of where you are. Now it's just all done by computer, and you can log in via the app. In fact, they're telling us to log in via the app. They don't want to do it verbally anymore. So look at the VHF logging app, and it goes all the way up the coast now. And there is enough overlay from one point to the other, and it goes a long way out. So if you're not used to that, please have a look at it. It's pretty good. I'm just going to assume that the vessel needs to be offshore compliant when we go offshore. We've all got proper BEST, PODs, etc., and compliant tethers. And do wear your tether if you're short-handed, as I never made that mistake once. Isn't that right? Right. Your VHF, it needs to be working properly. Look, I was only on a boat a couple of weeks ago coming back from Port Stephens. The VHF was not working properly. It happened, and it was a brand new boat, issued straight away. So the VHF is one thing, especially with the comms, the new comms, VHF tracking. You need to make sure that if there's any issues there, that it is working properly. Anchoring is one of the mistakes that I've had in the past. If your anchor's not working properly, it's the one thing you're going to rely on in the Whitsundays, in all the way up the coast. Make sure, just check your anchor and check the chain. I've seen enough chain that is, when you pull it out of the bow, it's rusty, and it shouldn't, it's a safety issue. Phil wouldn't have definitely agreed to it. Also look at some of the courses. I did the diesel engine course. In fact, Ian from Cruising Victoria Club mentioned that they put together a whole package of people to do courses. The engine course for me, I hated diesel. There's two things I don't like touching: the toilet and the diesel engine. So I've overcome the diesel engine issue by doing a course. And that's as far as I'll be taking it. But, as a segue, it's a pretty good thing to do a course. And if my wife was an offshore sailor, I'd probably make sure she did an engine course as well. At least changing impellers, the oil, the basic stuff. Let me see. Drills. Pretty important to take your crew on a real man overboard drill. Just tell them over and over again, and then jump in the water when you're out here practicing, and get them to actually make sure that they can do what you need them to do, because you're short-handed mostly. Use of flares and PLB, often overlooked. Which end do they strike? It's not just the crew, by the way. Half the skippers I know don't know how to pull the cap off and actually strike the flare. When you need it, you need it. So, we're cruising, we want to make sure it works, we need to do that.
What's PLB?
Personal locator beacon. So the one that goes to AMSA and lets them know you've got an issue. You need to know how to open that and turn it on. Okay, most important. When should I start my planning? Well, if you wanted to go to Townsville and do Magnetic Island Race Week, it's a little bit late to be starting now. You probably make it, but you really need a lot of time to make sure your boat's ready, and don't leave it till too late. Have this dream in your head that start now, and then you'll probably make it by the time the time comes around to actually do it. I think somebody mentioned that never have a person on a boat that says I have to be at a certain port on a certain day. It's happened to me. I've probably done it and it's always resulted in when does the rescue pick us up? You know, because you're pushing the weather, you know, it's just not on. And I don't know how many times I have to reiterate it to myself, but have no time limits. You've got to, I mean, this is a basic discussion, but you need to make sure you've got enough time. Or don't take that person, frankly. It's just not worth the effort. Seasickness. Look, we had Hobart cruise where we loaded all of the crew with, I think we used Nile compounding, which Andrew Eddinghauser was a fisherman. He started to use Nile compounding. He used to get sick just looking at the TV screen about fishing. And so we've had success with that, but take them out and see if you can get your crew seasick, because when the S hits the fan and you're off Newcastle or Port Stephens or somewhere where there's an extended trip needed, and everybody's sick and you're the only one not sick, you're really going, oh my God, I feel concerned. So if in fact they have a penchant for being sick, load them up before you leave with seasick tablets, and I suggest that one because it doesn't make you drowsy like half of the other brands, and I'm not getting a commission for not compounding. It's as simple as that. They're the ones that have fixed all my mates, and they work. So check your crew out and make sure that they're not going to have an unhappy trip. When is the best time to go? Right, well, from my perspective, going up to Townsville, May to November, or May earlier, any time now, out to July, most of the boats go on the feeder races up to Hamilton. But it's a really nice time, and you're not far off the whale time, you know, seeing the whales. Red, I'm referring to windy. And I don't know how many times I've got this wrong. Red refers to the colour of the wind on windy. If it's red, leave it. Just go another day. It's not worth it. And understand that, you know, you can use windy. If you haven't used windy, get windy, have a look at it, and it'll look days ahead and a week ahead. Or if you pay the premium now, you'll get 2 weeks ahead now. It used to be free, but it's not anymore. And if you see red, think about it. Don't do anything, because it's just not worth it. Am I insured? I've already mentioned that. Check your insurance policies. If you're thinking of going north, there is dates where you won't be covered if you haven't gone far enough south for the tropical cyclone. Okay, so just a little bit on routes. This is, you know, most people like to just travel during the day, and I understand that, and me too. So there's a whole bunch of places where I think is good to go on the way up, and I'll just run through those. These aren't exact, you can pick wherever you want, but these are where I prefer to have the fallback positions in by way of ports. Okay, so I generally go from Sydney to Pittwater, which is only a few hours up the road. That's Mum's boat on the right, by the way, it's not his name. Lady, that's great. And you know, 4 hours up the road, park inside of with the crew, and at least you'll be able to check the boat and remember what you've forgotten, and then somebody get your daughter or son to come down and deliver it to you. Pittwater to Newcastle or Port Stephens. I would prefer to go to Port Stephens, but Newcastle's on the way. It's just a few hours short of Port Stephens. Port Stephens is much easier to go direct, and it's a beautiful spot. Frankly, you don't have to pull into the marina there. I prefer not to. I just go in and pull up in Shoal Bay. And again, there is a few shallow spots on the way, and you need to follow the rules on that. I've got pictures of that in a second. The next one out from Port Stephens, I would go to Camden Haven as opposed to Port Macquarie, because I've had an issue with Port Macquarie. I had a 15-foot wave come behind me, and all of a sudden I'm doing 25 knots, and it scared the hell out of me. And it's scary. So Camden Haven was that much nicer to pull into, but depth is always an issue. I think Anna and Martin being to Camden Haven, we enjoyed it there. Trial Bay, one of my other favourites, is Southwest Rocks, and it's just another short hop. So you're sort of seeing where I'm going here in the short day hops wherever possible. Trial Bay to Coffs Harbour. Coffs Harbour's quite easy to get into. Make sure you look at your charts, etc. Yamba, great one, eh? Somebody said to me, Yamba's really easy and really good. Well, let's not forget about the rocks on the southern side, and don't forget about the bar, especially when it's breaking. And make sure you keep your sails up, because the last time I was in a motorboat and my motor's cut out halfway. So that's the closest I've come to near-death experience, but it's not one of my favourites, to be honest. I would prefer to travel overnight and go straight up to the Gold Coast. You know, yes, it's overnight, a day and a half. To me, it's a lot safer, and I prefer the Gold Coast Seaway over Yamba, especially when you can there's no prawns in Iluka co-op, so what's the point of going there? Okay, just a couple of pictures, the best pictures I could. So Port Stephens, you arrive, you come in from the, so that's coming from the south, so you're coming from the north, along Yakaba Headland, and then come around into Shoal Bay. If it's breaking and it's low tide, you will get a surf across the bar there. So depending on what your depth is, of course, I'm sort of talking in this room, average depth of 2.2 metres, thereabouts, 2.4 metres. You find it coming through the north. Camden Haven, again, try and approach these places in westerlies, which is generally what the winds are from about this time on. Southwesterlies, westerlies, hopefully. And then, of course, Trial Bay, which is really a lovely big bay. Of course, they're not protected from the nor'east, so don't try these on the nor'east. They are really southeasterly sort of approaches, if the wind's coming from the southeast. That makes sense? Yeah. Up to Coffs Harbour, pretty basic entry in Coffs, that's top left there. And of course, there's where you see the Yamba side of things. You've got to approach it basically from the north on the inside of where the sandbar is. Gold Coast Seaway can break. I've been there when it's broken, but we arrived at the wrong time. We were just racing, so we just pushed on ahead and planed on in. But don't do that. If we're cruising, it's not worth it. Just time your arrival to get to these places. Okay, I use that first part when I'm cruising or delivering as a precursor to find out what's going wrong, what needs fixing, and I use Southport as the place that I get things fixed. I allow 4 to 5 days. Okay, there's no other reason to go north that it's a lot warmer than what it is here. It's cold. Who wants to be here? Nicholas, I can see your smile. You're definitely doing this. So as soon as you get around the corner of the border, the southeast trades will be dominant. Pick your window where the window's every leg, and again, red, go back to bed. Just don't. It's not worth it. So we'll go all the way up from the Gold Coast Seaway up to the Whitsunday area. And this is kind of the route that I would take. GC to Mooloolaba. Mooloolaba has recently been dredged, but be very careful. You actually have to approach it from the land and then come around. It was only a few months back where I had a surfer actually come straight in next to me, and that's pretty scary. But I was in Martin's catch, so it was fine. Mooloolaba to Double Island Point. Again, I look at the distances, they're nice day trips. Double Island Point to Lady Musgrave. Now, if you're going to go all that way, let's go to Lady Musgrave. You know, I think I've seen some nods that people have done it. You might as well try and do it. The issues with Lady Musgrave, very simply, is that you need to approach Lady Musgrave, which is north of Fraser Island, on an incoming sort of tide. Try not to approach there on a nor'easter in the middle of the night. Isn't that right, Jan? Because there's only one mooring, and it's hard to catch. But we did it. You've got to work out whether you want to go the inside of Fraser Island, for those that haven't done this. If you do that, you've got to go via the bar, the White Point Bar, which can be, which is elementary, but you've got to do it the right way, on the right tide, and with common sense. If it's a big surf, forget it. Go around the outside. It's not worth it, and it's scary. But it's a notorious bar, and most people get across it by following the proper leads and on sensible, nice days. Okay, and it does cut off a lot of time. Once you get to, or you can go around the outside, which is all the way around the outside of Fraser Island, which is a long way. You know, it's 157 odd nautical miles. Well, that's not a day trip. That's a day the next day. As soon as you get to Musgrave, you've got a wonderful time. Spend a day there, at least. You know, it's a beautiful area. Seabird sanctuary, etc., and a turtle sanctuary at certain times of the year. You then have a choice. I would go to Gladstone. Very simply, Gladstone, and you'll see pictures on the next one. The Port of Gladstone, they've spent billions of dollars. It's unbelievable. It's the Curtis Islands is where they export the gas from, and you know it's like 3 hours in or 2 hours in the port just to get to the actual marina. But it's amazing what they've done, and it's a really interesting place to go. From Gladstone up to the Keppels, and then on to the famous Pearson Island. Now, the Keppels are great and pretty easy to navigate. And then Pearson Island, most people want to go there if they haven't been there, but it's not utopia. Pearson Island can get rough, and when it's rough, it has a wave, an actual surf. So if it's not right, don't think you're missing out. You're doing yourself a favour by not going there. I would then go to Mackay, especially if you're going to spend some time, because it's a hell of a lot cheaper, and you can get to supermarkets and things like that. Fantastic port, really quite. But Hamo, of course, Hamo or Airlie Beach is central to the Whitsundays. Take your pick there. Whitsundays, from the Whitsundays, I would go to the Gloucester Passage, which is renowned for the Shag Islands. What's it? It's called Shag Island, isn't it? Yeah, to the birds, right? But I used to go to Cape Upstart because you could just go there on the way, and it's really sheltered, especially from the southeasterly, and then up to Townsville from Cape Upstart and Magnetic Island, which I've been a supporter of for years, as you probably already know. Magnetic was the only race this year that was actually full in 16 minutes. So I think that's a worthwhile. They love the cruising people, and also Townsville Yacht Club are really helpful and lovely people. But as you can see, I would allow 9 days. We're at 2 weeks to get there. don't do it any less. And I think those that have done it would probably agree that's probably need 3 weeks. Okay, that's the point there. Okay, that's the Mooloolaba breakwater as it is recently, and as you can see the sand spit comes straight out, and you will hit going around that corner. You've got to come in from the beach, and you know, on the way into the marina down the bottom, on the way into the marina, it's shallow in lots of places. It's worthwhile because the marinas are really good marina and the services are quite good and so on and so forth. But check your depths. That one is the White Bay Bar. So as you can see, if you're not used to going, you know, following the coordinates and so on and so forth, and you don't feel you're up for it, trust me, it's probably better off to spend the extra half day and go around the outside. But if you can do it, it's worthwhile. But you are going between waves that are breaking on both sides, or can be. But, you know, it is deep enough where they send you. You've just got to, you know, just keep your eye on the ball, be confident about it. But it is a notorious bar. Double Island Point, now I've been past this 3 or 4 times. In fact, I think Anna and Martin have been to Double Island Point on the inside. I've heard it's absolutely fantastic. I got over next to it on a monohull, not a catamaran. And the guys surf off the edge and then they tuck around on the inside. But there's plenty of room there in the monohull. If you were going around the end of Fraser Island, you've got to go at least about 30 k's further on north from Fraser Island to get around the Breaksea Spit. So you can't just turn around Fraser Island and go left. You'll be in real strife. You actually just keep going into the wilderness, and then up pops a pole at the end of 30 odd kilometres, where it is, and that's called Breaksea Spit. Fabulous. Oh, there's Jan there at Lady Musgrave, and that's Lady Musgrave. So I honestly, if you're going to go all that way, why not do these wonderful things? Just pick your time. The Gladstone entry, that's just to give you a picture of Gladstone. Once you get to Gladstone, you've got to get all the way up there, and you're in the hands of the port controller. So whatever he says goes, or whatever they say goes. And that's what it's like. You know, you're coming in from the open ocean all the way up, and I've been ordered out of the poles, and I understand why, because there's ships the size of, you know, harbours just coming out. But Gladstone is just a fabulous place to go. It's really economical. It's good value for money, and it's run by the Queensland government. So I think that says it all. They're happy to have you there. And those buildings in the background, you can see, they're all for the yachties, and it's all free. So it's worthwhile, it's pretty interesting, and I would do it. Pearson Island, well, for those that haven't been there, that's the island in 3 different views, wonderful A-framed hut, which I'm looking forward to taking my colleagues to this year, where various bits of paraphernalia are left with their boats on it, and boats from overseas, windward passage. Yeah, so it's a really good place to go if it's a nice time. And you can sit up on the A-frame hut and have a glass of wine or a beer and just spend the whole day walking the island. It's not always wonderful. As I said, if it's coming in from the northeast or the southeast, or even southwest or west, forget it. It's terrible. It's a rolling swell. It's terrible. The Keppels, I love the Keppels, and I would definitely go into the Keppel Islands, the top left there, and that's Roslyn Bay Marina. The issue with Roslyn Bay Marina is that it's really shallow. It silts up, and if you've got a deep boat, you will run aground. It's no big deal. It's mud. You just have to make sure you come in at the right at the right depth, you know, the high tide. You'll float back out. I have been aground, and you just float off and then come out at high tide. But very well serviced marina as well. Mackay, as I mentioned earlier, it's a very old, you know, it's just a big marina, but it's got a huge seawall. Able Point is probably a lot cheaper than Hamo, but Hamo's in the middle of everything. There's very few other marinas there. Frankly, I would be finding a nice bay like Palm Bay and just anchoring. It's a lot nicer, if you ask me. But you have to go to shops and things like that. Able Point Marina. Shag Island, well, it's all about the birds, and that's a great little place to stop. And then, of course, you've got Townsville Yacht Club, very accommodating, and Magnetic Island, and that's at Townsville.
You might find Shag Island called Passage.
Sorry?
You might find it's called Passage Island on
Passage
the chart.
Island. Thank you.
It's only to us shaggers that call it Shag Island.
Oh. So, read summary, which I've got this in paper. That's the sort of route that I would have, 2 weeks thereabouts, if not a bit more. My favourite anchorages, which I'm happy to, if you are genuinely wanting to do this, I'm happy to just send you my favourites and things like that. If you just, there's my card over there if you want it, I'm happy to send it to you, with just all the favourites in marinas and also anchorages. There's a reason I prefer the anchorages over the marinas, they're a hell of a lot cheaper. Well, I've got some handouts here, which is the basics of what to double check, which you can all come and grab if you want. When you go on a passage, things to check. There's 2 pages of each, that's just the start of it. So I'll put them over here if you would like those. And my card's over there as well. I've got one little, just to spur you on to going and doing this. If you haven't done it, Santa's in, right? Nicholas?
She's in.
I've got just this is, by the way, there's nothing open. Just a little movie which doesn't have any sound to it, which is great.
Free advertising now. Free advertising.
Free advertising, yes. He finally gets to see what his boat did. There's some fantastic little Pearl Bay up in the north side of Cayman. It's fabulous for anchoring. You could probably spend another 5 days at least in the Whitsundays. I was lucky enough to have a whole heap of different people and families, and they were just looked after and had a great time. A bit of fun.
Are there many moorings in Pearl Bay, Andrew?
Pardon?
And many swinging moorings in Pearl Bay?
Yep, there's about 7 or 8 moorings in Pearl Bay, and they're all they're rated for large, medium-sized, and small vessels. So the small vessels get to go to the shore, and so that's all a part of the Whitsundays rules, and you can download those quite easily. There's some absolutely beautiful spots there, nice walks, beautiful anchorages, and as I said, spend a week there, especially if it's your own boat, and that's Whitehaven Beach, that's they're my 3 daughters actually.
Haven't got any pictures of bad weather. Not being
We didn't have any bad weather at all. That's Pool Bay from a distance. And that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
Someone I spoke to said that the trip back to Sydney isn't as enjoyable as the trip north. I mean, what's your thinking on that?
Nicholas, the trip back is generally quicker in that you don't want to hang around for a long time. Hopefully done a wonderful trip north. But it is warmer, I must say. But the southeasterly trades are a bit of an issue when you're coming back down to the coast generally, but not all the time. If you've got time, just wait for it to go around to the west, as it obviously, or it can do, or the northeast or the east. So just pick your time again.
If you come back in October or November,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah, so leave in May, Nicholas, and then come back in October.
That's
Thank you very much
Oh, thank
for
you.
coming and talking to us. It's been, I'm sure,